The doorbell rang on an autumn afternoon while I was making dinner. Joel, my husband, was still at the office, so I wasn't expecting any guests. When I went to open the door, I saw Raphael, Joe's business partner, standing there. His intense, mysterious gaze was as if he were hiding something that was about to be revealed. "May I come in?" he asked in a firm, husky voice, and I felt the atmosphere change, almost as if there was an electric charge in the air. "We need to talk," he said in a serious tone that made me uneasy. The silence that followed was tense, and I tried to imagine what could be so urgent that he'd come to my home without warning about what I insisted, crossing my arms to hide my discomfort. He then leaned slightly closer, closing the space between us. Joa is a lucky man. I entered and sat on the couch, watching every detail around him. My heart raced as I couldn't understand the reason for this unexpected visit. "What brings you here?" I asked, trying to hide my nervousness. Started with a look that made my heart race, but there's something he can't give you. My thoughts were jumbled, and before I could react, he went on, "I can give you what you're missing." His words were like a temptation, and I shivered, caught between a moral quandary and a desire that was starting to take hold. "What are you talking about, Raphael?" I whispered almost inaudibly. "You know exactly what I mean." He then smiled mysteriously, and the room appeared smaller, the walls closing in around us. Days later, as I walked into the city's coffee shop, my usual refuge, I noticed that Raphael was sitting in a corner. I hesitated, but he had already noticed me and nodded slightly. I went to the counter and ordered my coffee, and before I could decide what to do, he was standing next to me, holding his cup. "Sure," I said, trying to hide my nervousness, and we sat by the window where the sunlight cast a nearly magical glow. He talked about work, but there was something in his eyes that I couldn't make out. "You look different today," he said, leaning a little closer. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to hide my uneasiness. "Did something happen?" He smiled, and it seemed like a secret. My face warmed, but I tried to hide it by pretending it was just another day. Gradually, the conversation became more intimate, and soon we were discussing dreams and hardly ever our fears. In a quiet moment, I felt his hand gently touch my hand and apologized. He said, but I should have reacted, maybe even pulled my hand back. Instead, I focused on his eyes and sensed an unmistakable connection. "This is crazy," I whispered, struggling to find the right words. Perhaps he responded, but sometimes life throws us curveballs, and I don't want to ignore this. We sat in silence, sensing each other's presence, knowing that we were going too far. The temptation became too great, and one sunny afternoon, I accepted Raphael's offer, sending a message to confirm our meeting at a discreet hotel. My heart raced as I got ready to dress. The first kiss was intense, forbidden, and unavoidable. I felt his hands pull me close, and I gave in to the moment. Forgetting any regret, that night was like an intoxicating dream. I didn't want to wake from lying beside him, his hand stroking. I arrived early, and every second of waiting felt endless until I heard a soft knock on the door. Raphael entered with a confidence that made me even more nervous. He closed the door and looked at me in silence for a moment before approaching. "This is what you want," he whispered on my arm. I knew it was true, not just the desire, but the feeling of being wanted and the center of someone's attention as intense as Raphael's. I knew I was going too far, but at that moment, what mattered most was the intensity of emotion and the pleasure it brought me. The night flew by, and as dawn broke, we both knew it was time to part. Raphael was the first to get up quietly, dressed, and said, "We need to be discreet, but if you want, we can keep this." Despite my internal conflict, Raphael smiled and stepped closer, sealing my lips with a gentle kiss. "Until next time, my dear." Before he left, I stayed there trying to process everything that had happened, but the guilt soon started to creep in. At the same time, the desire to relive those intense moments was strong. I watched him in silence as my mind filled with conflicting emotions and thoughts, but one thing was clear. I didn't want this to end. I didn't want to return to my monotonous routine where I felt invisible. I couldn't help but think about when I'd see Raphael again as I was getting ready to leave. What had begun as a seductive attraction had turned into something irresistible, and with it, I took my first step into a world of passion and danger that would forever change my life. When Raphael showed up at our house that night, I never imagined it would lead to such an intense upheaval. He wasn't just my husband Joel's business partner. He had always sparked an unsettling. I had never thought of him as more than my husband's business partner, but that night, I noticed a new firmness in his gaze, something decisive and alluring. With XA busy at the office, I took it upon myself to keep Raphael company, and the tension between us was almost palpable. His question, "Have you ever thought about doing something unexpected in life?" caught me off guard. "What do you mean by that, Raphael?" he asked, his smile mysterious. "Raphael, I'm married to Joa." You know that he nodded but didn't back away. And yes, I respect that, but the attraction between us is undeniable, Anna, and we can't ignore it forever. Dee started to consume me as he held my hand, leaving the decision in my hands. I laughed, trying to hide my nervousness, like what skydiving, climbing a mountain, etc. He moved closer, his gaze fixed on me, something more intimate, and my heart raced. "I'm just a little tired from work," which was a common excuse for my absences and mood swings brought on by my meetings with Raphael. Work meetings, urgent projects, anything that sounded reasonable, and the constant fear of being discovered were all there, but every moment with Raphael made me crave more. He made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in a long time, so my life became a never-ending game of. The line between desire and guilt became increasingly blurry, and I was unsure of how long I could maintain this lie. I lied to Za, created allies, and felt guilty while my desire for Raphael seemed to be unquenchable. It was like a drug, and I was completely addicted. "You know all this is crazy, right?" I said once as we were sitting in the car, and after a passionate moment, "I know," he replied, stroking my face, "but I can't stop thinking about you." My heart raced at the thought of spending a whole weekend with him, away from everything, but reality swiftly pulled me back, and I asked, trying to hide my anxiety, "What if we took a getaway, just the two of us?" The next meeting, the next touch, the next kiss, and so on. I was torn between the security of my marriage with Zoe and the overwhelming passion that Raphael gave me. One day, Raphael suggested a trip, and we were lying in bed, still tangled in the unkempt sheets, when he turned to me with a playful smile. The confident way that Raphael always had an answer for everything only made me more curious. "Do you think it will work?" I asked, still unsure, and he took my hand and looked directly into my eyes. I carefully planned the lie, telling Joel that I had an important conference out of town and that my presence was necessary. He believed me, of course, and that trust only made me feel worse. The night before the business trip, Joel helped me pack. "Will you miss me?" he asked, smiling. "Of course I will," I replied, feeling a pang in my chest. Zal's innocent eyes broke my heart, but the excitement of the adventure overcame me. The following morning, I met Raphael at the designated spot. He was waiting in the car, and as I got in, he asked, "Are you ready for the adventure more than ever?" I replied, trying to ignore the guilt. The trip was full of laughter and lighthearted conversation. "I'm glad you came," he whispered to me, and I replied, letting myself be carried away by the moment we spent the day together exploring the city, dining at discreet restaurants, laughing, and the anticipation for the night being palpable. When we finally returned to the hotel, passion took over for a few hours, and I forgot about Joel, the lies, and all the complications. For a moment, the world seemed to stop when we closed the door to the room, and he pulled me in for a kiss. I asked Raphael, "You know this can't last forever, don't you?" as we lay sleeping, and he turned to face me. "I know, but while it lasts, let's make the most of it," he said. So, that unforgettable weekend went by, full of passion, laughter, and the constant tension of being discovered. I felt a freedom I never imagined, but I knew that happiness was brittle and could collapse at any moment as soon as we closed the hotel room door the first time. Raphael whispered, "I can't stop thinking about you." As we lay entwined, I confessed feeling a mixture of pleasure and guilt. The sense of freedom was intoxicating, and for a brief moment, I was able to forget about Joa and what this meant, but deep down, I was afraid of Every moment with Raphael was amazing but dangerous, and this combination of pleasure and risk was addictive. We spent the day exploring the city together like an ordinary couple, having lunch at a charming restaurant and walking hand in hand through the city. The following morning, I woke up in his arms, and for a moment, everything felt perfect, but reality soon caught up with me. "We need to be careful," he said seriously. "I know," I replied. As we watched the sunset from a bench, I told him, "I wish this would never end." He replied, "I too," and squeezed my hand. That night, we went back to the hotel and gave ourselves over to passion once more, but this time, a cloud of uncertainty hung over us. "What if someone finds out?" I asked, still breathless after another intense night. "We'll be careful, no one will know." He tried to reassure me, but I was already too involved to see everything clearly. It was time to face reality the following day, so I packed my belongings with a heavy heart, knowing that this unforgettable weekend was coming to an end. Raphael asked as we said our goodbyes in the hotel lobby, "Yes, we will," even though I knew that every meeting increased the risk. I came home with a divided heart and a mind full of memories, and when I opened the door, I saw Joel in the living room, looking worried. "Hey love, how was the business trip?" he asked, approaching for an embrace. I replied, "It went well, sound normal," but as he talked about his weekend, I couldn't help but think of Raphael and our activities together. In the days that followed, I noticed that Joel was paying closer attention to my behavior, as if he was searching for something. I tried to act normal, but every innocent glance he gave me made the guilt grow heavier. Over dinner, Joel finally said, "You've seemed different lately. Are you sure everything's okay?" And my face heated up. "Yes, I'm fine, just a little tired." The following day, I decided to meet Raphael at a discreet cafe. He was sitting in the back looking worried, and as I approached him, he got up for a quick kiss. "Joel's starting to get suspicious," I said, sitting down opposite him. Raphael frowned and said, "I don't know how long I can keep hiding this." "It's been an intense week," I replied, trying to hide my nervousness that night. Joel slept next to me, unaware of the turmoil inside me, and I tossed and turned while Joel slept next to me. With a lump in my throat, he squeezed my hand. "We knew this was dangerous from the beginning, but I couldn't abandon you. We just needed to exercise more caution." I nodded, realizing that he was correct, but the thought of carrying on the affair in spite of the risks left me feeling conflicted. I went home still thinking about these things. Joshua was watching TV in the living room, and I sat next to him. He put his arm around me, and after a few minutes, he said, "I was thinking we could take a trip, just the two of us, to relax a bit." He made the suggestion with a hopeful smile. I tried to hide my guilt by saying, "That sounds like a good idea," but deep down I knew that I wasn't ready to let go of Raphael because my passion for him was stronger than anything I had ever experienced. In the days that followed, I made a concerted effort to act naturally, and Zal continued to seem suspicious, but didn't say anything else. Meanwhile, Raphael and I continued to meet in secret, and every time we did, I felt a mixture of excitement and fear, but I couldn't stop. One afternoon shortly after, Raphael sent me a message after I got home from a meeting. "We need to talk about the future. We can't keep going on like this forever." My heart raced, knowing that he was right, but the thought of losing him was too much to bear. I was torn between two worlds, not knowing which way to go. When I got home, he said in a serious tone, "We need to talk." My heart froze. I knew that the time had come for me to face reality and make a decision about my life. I got up early as usual and made breakfast for Joa before. I left home with a quick kiss for Joel and a forceful smile, and as I got into the car, my phone vibrated with a message from Raphael. "I can't wait to see you today." My heart was racing, and it wasn't just because of the coffee. Since he and Joa became business partners about a year ago, nothing had been the same. I never imagined a man could stir me as much as Raphael did. Our secret encounters had become a regular part of my routine. I tried to concentrate on my work after arriving at the office, but my thoughts were scattered. Every message Raphael sent me set off an uncontrollable reaction in me. He suggested that we meet at the hotel this afternoon, but I knew I shouldn't, but the temptation was too strong. I quickly said yes at 3. The day went slowly, with each minute feeling endless. When the clock struck 2:30, I left the office and headed straight to the hotel. I entered the room with a sense of anticipation and, soon after Raphael arrived, I felt a wave of excitement. His eyes glistened with desire, and he pulled me in for a passionate kiss. Every touch and caress made my body shiver. "I can't stop thinking about you," he whispered in my ear, igniting my desire even more. What began as an attraction had evolved into something much deeper. The afternoon flew by, and soon it was time to head back home. Za was there, and his warm smile and innocent look made me feel guilty, but Joel asked me how my day was going. "Was good, just another day at the office," I replied, trying to sound casual, but I was in turmoil inside. How could I keep living this lie? But the truth was I couldn't stop. Raphael attracted me in a way I had never experienced. Our encounters became more frequent, and each time we met the intensity grew. I justified my absences to Joa with excuses about work meetings and last-minute commitments. He always trusting, never suspected a thing. One time we met at Raphael's office during business hours. The tension of possibly being discovered, the risk of being caught made everything even more exciting. I told him, "You're crazy," with a mischievous smile. "Crazy for you?" Coming back to work with adrenaline still pumping through my veins was an indescribable feeling. The provocative messages we exchanged throughout the day became constant. Every word and suggestion fueled my desire, and whenever we could, we'd meet briefly in his car. These stolen moments were intense and passionate, but they kept me in a state of awe, a constant state of alertness. Every time I got home and looked at Joel, my heart, I knew I was playing a risky game, but I couldn't stop. "We need to be more cautious," I told Raphael after one of those brief car encounters. "I know, but I can't stay away from you," and he responded with a look that made me melt. With each encounter, my desire for him increased, and I felt a mixture of excitement and guilt as I came to terms with the fact that betrayal had become a part of me to disregard, and as a result, our covert meetings kept becoming a regular part of my life.